Hello, everybody. This is Jason Barrett. I'm a carnivore pharmacist. Welcome to Meet the Truth podcast. And on today's episode, I want to dive into the question, are we poisoning ourselves? I want to dive into some of the truth about what's making us sick and how to break free. So again, are we poisoning ourselves? You have to stop and really ask that question. Because if we are, everything changes. And today in America, you got to understand we are inundated with a whole bunch of new foods that have never existed in history. And unfortunately, a lot of them are what I call Franken foods. What that means is that they don't exist in nature. It's not something that you could go find growing out in the wild or that could be produced as a product of an animal. Most of those things, if you think about it, when you go into a supermarket or a grocery store, those things that we do find naturally occurring they have to be refrigerated. They're usually on the perimeter of the store. Their shelf life is not very long, and that's why they have to be refrigerated. So, because that's really the only means to extend them. If you went and bought some vegetables or some fruits or some meat or eggs or dairy products, and you left them at room temperature for a week on the counter, there's a good chance that most, if not all of them, are going to either be not very good, or they're just going to be completely ruined. You wouldn't want to eat them. Whereas if you go to the middle of the store and you grab a pack of Oreos or something that's processed and been packed with preservatives, and it's in a car or in a jar or it's in a can, you could leave it on that counter for probably for 5 years and it would still be safe to eat. For that reason, they're lasting unnaturally long. And honestly, the reason why they are, I'm going to dive into that here in a little bit. Our body, it doesn't mix well with our physiology, and on a metabolic level, it causes some massive shifts and some massive problems within the human body. The most dangerous toxins out there are the ones that look harmless, taste amazing, but they quietly dismantle our health one bite, one breath, or one product at a time. And there's a long list of these things out there. And again, usually they taste amazing and look amazing and they're pleasurable. So they can be highly addictive as well. Processed foods. Let's just start there. Things that are inundated with excessive sugar. I mean, sugar these days, refined sugar, it does not exist in nature. Most of it is going to be extracted from either sugar cane or sugar beets. And when it is, it's nothing like the sugar that you buy at the store that's been bleached and super sweet. And definitely when it hits your tongue, it is amazing. I'm the first to admit that that's my weakness. I am a sugar addict. There's no one on this planet that likes sugar more than I do, but they put it in everything. And I promise you, it's the sweetest tasting poison on the planet. It causes so many bad downstream effects on a metabolic scale. And, diabetes, we know, comes directly from excessive sugar over a long period of time, but that's not it. I mean, cancer cells thrive in the presence of sugar. Inflammation thrives. Usually a lot of neurological disorders are stemmed in inflammation. They start with neuroinflammation, which can lead to neurodegeneration or whatever it may be. But a lot of times sugar is involved in not just sugar, but there's a whole cascade of inflammatory effects that can come from that. One of them being hyperinsulinemia, whenever your insulin levels are elevated, but not only elevated, they're elevated chronically. And when this happens, you develop what's called insulin resistance, where when the cells are exposed to insulin and it never seems to stop, then it's kind of like the boy who cried wolf. The cell's like, okay, like this thing never goes away. I'm not going to react as strongly. And over time, your insulin sensitivity diminishes, insulin resistance rises. And let's just put it this way. Once you cross from 100% insulin sensitivity to all the way across this bridge to full-blown insulin resistance, that is type 2 diabetes. That is how we get there. And so, like I said, the processed foods, they're full of sugar. They're full of the seed oils. These seed oils are so bad, and they are in everything. They're in the fast food. They're in all the processed garbage. Why? It's because they're cheap. They're super cheap for the food industry to make these foods. They taste good, and they can make more profit by using these oils that are very cheap compared to using, more expensive, healthier alternative. The problem with the seed oils is the way they're extracted. They're extremely oxidative, which feeds directly. It is just inflammation in a bottle, literally, as soon as you put it in. The preservatives that they put in there. What does a preservative do? It extends the shelf life. Why does it extend? You got to ask these questions. Why does it extend shelf life? Does it just wave the magic wand and all of a sudden it's extended? There's got to be a reason, right? Well, here's the reason. The reason why is that it's basically antimicrobial. It won't allow microbial growth to happen, and since it won't, that means it's basically antibacterial, antifungal, anti-mold, anti-everything that could consume that or make it go bad. What do you think happens when you ingest preservatives that are antimicrobial in nature? Do you think it's going to do a good thing or a bad thing to the lining of your gut, to your good friendly bacteria down there in your microbiome? It's obvious. It's going to go through and it's going to carpet bomb those things. I mean, it's big, it's huge. It will completely change the entire ecosystem that lives within your gut that we need, that we have always needed to thrive. It eliminates, I mean, dozens and dozens of these strains that we need. And this is what's leading to a lot of the rise in gut health condition, diagnoses and autoimmune disorders and leaky gut and, SIBO and colitis and all these other things. And to be honest with you, most autoimmune diseases, if not all, have a gut connection. Almost, I mean, I've talked to so many people. I had 3 different autoimmune diagnoses. None of them were gut diagnoses. I had rheumatoid arthritis, psoriatic arthritis, ankylosing spondylitis. I had no idea that there was a gut connection for the longest period of time. All the medicines I took weren't treating the gut. They were treating inflammation in a different way, and that's why it wasn't getting to the root cause. Mine was actually gut derived, and not until I found Carnivore almost a decade later. And again, I'm a pharmacist, so I thought the medications were going to work, and it just baffled me when medication after medication, after everything, all the treatments, all the different things I had tried, all the protocols, all the therapies, nothing was getting to the root cause, and I couldn't figure out why for the longest time. Some more hidden poisons, the plastics and everything, the BPA, the phthalates, even just a water bottle, if you have that, I would recommend getting rid of all plastic bottle, because if it sits out in the sun, it can actually release microplastics, and every time you take a drink of that water, you're ingesting it. It's going in. It has your body has a really tough time getting rid of those things. Obviously, the pesticides, household chemicals are a big one. Blue light exposure is a big one these days, because all the screens that were in the modern world, whether that be your smartphone, your television, your PC monitor, if you're sitting in front of a screen, especially late at night, then that blue light is flooding into your eyes, and it's telling your brain that basically it's still bright, the sun is still up, it's not time to go to bed. It's inhibiting your melatonin production, which usually when it's dark, melatonin starts to rise, and as melatonin rises naturally within your body, your eyes get heavy, you get sleepy, you go to bed. But whenever you're staring at a screen, especially if you're in bed, a lot of people will be in bed staring at a screen. It is not doing anything but hurting the quality of your sleep. And if you do that repeatedly, if that becomes a habit, you're just asking. It eventually will add up, and it's not fun. So, basically you get poor sleep, and that's just constant inflammation, because while you're sleeping, one of the biggest things your body does is it detoxes and it gets rid of things. But if you can't get that restful sleep, if you're either not getting quantity, enough sleep, or if you're not getting the quality, the good, nice, restorative, deep sleep, then your body can't recover. And over time, it's going to turn into inflammation. I used to fill prescriptions for for these symptoms for myself. And yeah, I took every anti-inflammatory in the pharmacy, all the way up to the big guns, the biologics. Yeah, some of them put a little dent in it, but it'd be the equivalent of, it was almost like, if your house was on fire and they called the fire department was like, okay, we're not going to send the firefighters. We're just going to go over there and, suck the smoke off and blow some cold air over there and just try to reduce the symptoms of the fire, not actually put the fire out. That's kind of what a lot of these medications are doing. They're not actually hitting the fire, or if they are, there is an equally bad side effect. Those biologics, yes, they're very powerful, but the reason they work is they turn your entire immune system down. Well, when that happens, now you're prone to infections of any kind, any little tiny infection. You could get a spider bite, you could get the common cold or the flu. It could turn into a massive infection that could end up being fatal. It could turn septic because your immune system cannot fight off the infection because you're literally hampering it down. Either that, or a cancerous cell, which pop up all the time in our systems, and your body recognizes it. Oh, that's a foreign, that's a bad cell. Let's mark it, let's eliminate it, let's send the cavalry to take it out. And it does that when it's functioning optimally. But whenever you are suppressing it on purpose, you raise your risk for several different types of cancer. And so it's kind of a double edged, it's not the answer, and it's not getting to the root of the inflammation anyway. It's still just treating the symptom. So, we're not getting sicker because of genetics. We're getting sicker because of what's become normal in this world. And it is, when you look around and you see everybody else eating it, it seems safe and you can get away with it. A lot of these, it's such a small amount of poison, it's not going to kill you. And it's not even going to heavily impact you for quite a while. You're going to have to do this repeatedly. And that's why it's so sneaky. You won't suspect it's the culprit. You'll blame it on something else. You won't think, oh, it's because I've been doing that and it had some sort of accumulative effect. You know, and that's exactly what it is. It's cumulative toxicity. So just think if someone was giving you a micro dose of a poison every single day, just dropping it in your water, every day. And, you know, like you could tell a little something's going on, but it was almost immeasurable. Well, that's exactly what's going on in our food supply these days. Out here, all the fast food and the processed garbage, all the stuff that's not on the perimeter of the store, like I said, when you're going and getting those things, you're getting the preservative, you're getting the sugar and the excessive grains, you're getting all these seed oils, you're getting all these different things that are going in, and your body considers them toxic. Now, for a while, it can deal with it. It can deal with it. But a lot of times once you start doing that, slowly, it'll add up until it finally reaches a boiling point. Once it accumulates enough in there, boom, it blows the top off something. Something happens, and all of a sudden, boom, you've got this whole brand new weird symptom. Seems like it came out of nowhere, but it didn't. It didn't. It's been building up for a while. And, that's exactly what happened to me. Before I know it, I'm on all these medications and I'm being diagnosed with multiple autoimmune conditions with no hope of ever getting off of these medications. That when your body can't eliminate these toxins, a lot of times what it does is it just stores them away and it'll tuck them away in like fat cells, or it'll tuck them away and, like say it's a heavy metal or it's something that it just cannot, it does not have the ability to get rid of them. It will tuck those away. And so they're not just right there in the bloodstream, but they're still there and they could be released and they could come back with a vengeance down the road. And especially if you're just continuing to pile these things on, they can really become problematic. Not only that, when it's in there, it just makes your immune system stay on alert. Your immune system can't be fooled. It knows when there's something there that shouldn't be there, something foreign. And essentially when that happens, you're going to be fatigued. You're going to have massive anxiety. You're going to be in pain. You're probably, if you keep doing this long enough, you're probably going to be labeled with an autoimmune condition. And the problem with autoimmune in the modern medicine world is that usually by the time they call it autoimmune, that basically means we don't know exactly what caused it, and we also don't know how to get rid of it. So instead of trying to, we are only going to treat the symptoms, or do disease management, where you got this diagnosis and you are going to have to take this medicine for the rest of your life. If you stop taking the medication, the symptom's going to come back. It's exactly what happened to me. I became not only was I the pharmacist, but I also became the sick patient, and I got to see how much I thought these things were going to save me and help me, and how much they didn't. And I had to suffer for well over a decade before I finally found the answer, which for me was carnivore, and I'll go into that in a minute. There's a system, and it's designed a certain way. I hate to say it, but there's three big ones. And if you go back a couple episodes, I talk about these three entities that stand to profit from the way it is. And that's going to be big food, who they're the ones that are responsible for all the fast food and the processed stuff that's in the middle of the store, that's highly addictive, that is, affordable, that has a long shelf life. There's a lot of perks to buying it, and it's pleasurable and it tastes great. I'm not going to lie. But it's easy to get you addicted to that food. So it starts there. and it's poisoning you. It's poisoning you. And so essentially, if you keep eating that food, you'll get sick. Not sick enough to die, but that's the whole purpose because for this model, there's only one patient that's highly profitable, and that's not going to be healthy patients because healthy patients they're not sick. They don't need to go to the doctor. They don't need any medications. And that's not going to be dead patients. If you get so sick that you die, they don't make any money, but they want you to be kind of that Goldilocks zone right in the middle where you're sick enough that you go to the doctor and you get on these medications and then you got to stay on them for the rest of your life. So now you're addicted to the food. So that's big food. Big pharma is the second one, and I'm talking about big pharma, not pharmacists and pharmacies like small ones. I'm talking about big pharma, the big pharmaceutical giants that are making these drugs. Now that big food has got you addicted and made you sick, now you got to go to the doctor and be put on these medications that you're not going to be able to get off of for the rest of your life. And big insurance is the third one. They're involved every step of the way. You know, they're involved at your doctor's office. If you have insurance, they're involved at the lab when you go do lab work or any testing that you may do. They're involved at the pharmacy level. You know, when you go in there and you got to pay your copays, they're making premiums off of you all across the board. So those three entities stand to gain if they can get you to become a subscriber, even though you may not realize that's what you did. That is what you did. It is very profitable for them to get you addicted, to make you sick, to then not only make you sick, but then treat your symptoms and also tell you that you have to take them for the rest of your life. Very profitable, and it's an endless feedback loop. Now, listen, again, I'm not anti medicine. I am a pharmacist, and there are medicines, if they are root causal in nature and they get to the bottom of it and you only got to take, one or two courses of treatment and then you can stop and it got rid of the problem, okay. And there are a few medications that are like that, but the vast majority are not. And they're not, I mean, they're not even designed to do that. I mean, a good example is like, say you go in and you have a fever, and I mean, that's pretty indicative that you have an infection, and they do a culture and they find out what kind of bug what kind of bacterial infection you have, what it's susceptible to. They give you an antibiotic, you take the antibiotic. Do you have to take the antibiotic for the rest of your life? No. Why? Because it was root causal. It went to the infection. Whereas they could just go in and go, oh, we don't know what it was. You have a fever? Okay, we're only going to treat your fever. We're going to let the infection stay in the background and possibly get worse and go septic on you. No, they don't do that. But on a lot of these other medications, that is exactly what they do. They only treat the symptom. They don't go to the cause. And then it just manifests, it just festers in the background and can just continue to get worse and worse down the road. Not to mention, a lot of these medications have side effects, or they lead to deficiencies or depletions, which can then lead to new symptoms. And now you go back to the doctor and you got a new symptom or you got a new side effect. What are they going to tell you? They've got another medication for you. Good news, they got another one for you. Now you're on 3 medications instead of just one. And fast forward this a few years and you may be on a half a dozen or more medications and you're not feeling better. I hate when I see this happen, but I've been a pharmacist for 16 years and I've seen it happen more times than I care to talk about. In America, we've kind of normalized symptoms. We've medicalized lifestyle disease. Like if you get diagnosed with something, instead of actually getting to the bottom of it, as soon as you get diagnosed with that, boom, they just tell you, boom, you have no hope. You got to take this medication for the rest of your life. For me, the whole time I was doing this, I kept getting kind of sicker and sicker, like I said, over the course of a decade. And by the time it was at its peak, I was really suffering head to toe. That's how I knew it was systemic, because there was really no part of me that was okay. I'll just give you a quick rundown. I had psoriatic lesions on the back of my scalp and arms. I had rheumatoid swollen fingers and thumbs. I had massive cervical pain at C1 and C2, the two highest vertebrae on my spine, all up and down my spine. I had all kinds of inflammation. I had bilateral ankle swelling. I had GI problems, bloating. I was chronically fatigued. I was anxious. I wasn't sleeping very well at all. I was very irritable. The list goes on. And there was a lot more symptoms than that, but it was literally head to toe. And so every time when I first decided to go start seeking help, I was very optimistic. I'm like, I'm a pharmacist. I'm going to get to the bottom of this. I'm going to go see whatever doctor I got to do. I'm going to be the most compliant patient ever. I'm going to take it as prescribed. We're going to knock this thing out. And, basically I'll just compare it to like trying door number 1. You've got all these different options. You can go to whatever doctor you want. You can try different diets, you can try different supplements, you can try different medications, you can do all these different things. Well, you ultimately choose what your first one is, you know? And so I'd go through door number one, and that didn't work. And so then it's door number two. And after going through dozens of prescriptions and dozens of different supplements that were supposed to be the most anti-inflammatory, and dozens of different diets and different therapies. You know, I did all kinds of therapies. Obviously, I did physical therapy, I did phototherapy, I did grounding, I did meditation, I mean, so many different things, hoping that that would be the thing that actually got and was the breakthrough. And I was very optimistic. And you got to understand, I mean, like, after you go through 372 doors, it's pretty hard to still be optimistic that door 373 is going to be the one that's going to work. So by the time I got very sick and was essentially told that I had significant erosion at C1 and C2, and that these two vertebrae were becoming so thin and brittle that they could fracture quite easily, I got desperate, because they're saying if that fractures, C3 controls respiration, which basically could be a death sentence. Got my attention real quick. And so I had heard about the carnivore diet, and, you know, up until then, I kind of thought it was crazy, thought it sounded preposterous. I just knew I was going to, you know, get gout, or it was going to be inflammatory. I was going to clog up all my arteries, or I was going to be constantly constipated from the lack of fiber, or my heart was going to explode from all the saturated fat, or whatever. There's a bunch of reasons that you hear about that are kind of scary for reasons not to even consider doing it. But I decided to give it a 30-day try. And so I'll just say that was we'll just call it door 373. Door 373, even though I did not expect it to be the one that was going to work, I was super skeptical. It was the one. It was the one. I told my wife I'm going to try this for 30 days. I was like, I don't think it's going to work, but I'm going to try it. In 10 days, I kid you not, I felt the inflammation going down from inside my body in a more powerful way than any of those therapies, any of those medications, any other intervention. And that includes going all the way to the Mayo Clinic and being on some very high powered drugs like the biologics that I was speaking of. It was way more powerful than any of those. And I looked at her, I said, you ain't gonna believe this. This is crazy that this diet is what's helping me the most. And I said, there's no way I'm stopping at day 30 if it keeps going like this. And sure enough, by day 30, I felt like a champ. I hadn't felt that good in well over a decade, maybe more than one decade. I mean, I hadn't felt that well since I was like younger, you know, and I was feeling better. I was sleeping better. I was in a better mood. The brain fog had lifted that I didn't even know I had. I was way more optimistic, which let me know that I was basically depressed and hopeless for good reason, you know. And everything was going good, you know, and I was like, I am not jumping off of this train. And so I continued and I continued to do it. And over the course of a year, I ended up reversing every symptom that I had. I ended up getting off all the medications within 2 years. I got off of every single anti-inflammatory medication, and I fired my rheumatologist, and I haven't looked back. I mean, this diet, to me, it is that good. Now, I have tried to bring back some other foods just to see if I can handle them. And unfortunately, even 6 years later, I can't. As soon as I bring something back, some of those old symptoms try to rear their ugly head, and you better believe I jump straight back on the carnivore bandwagon. And I'm happy to do so. You have no idea. I didn't think I was getting my health back. I did not think that. I mean, after a year, I'd lost 50 to 60 pounds. My whole physique was completely different. My whole personality, like I was just not, I wasn't a zombie anymore. I was thriving. I was living. If you know anybody that has any symptoms or has been struggling or has chronic inflammation, especially if there's an autoimmune thing involved, or if there's a gut connection at all, maybe it's a gut diagnosis of some sort, if there's even a small chance, I would say, I'm not saying it's going to work, but all I want to say is this: I wish someone would have pointed to door 373 before I went through the first 372. That would have saved me a decade plus. Okay. And so that's all I'm saying is, I'm not saying it's going to work, but it is worth that being your next option. You know, give it a 30-day try. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, at least you know that did not work, and now you can move on, and maybe one of the other 372 things will work when that doesn't. But the reason it works is because it essentially gives your body a very premium source of fuel. It gives all the protein and the essential amino acids that your body needs. It gives plenty of fat that can be used for fuel. And Not only that, it gives you both of the essential fatty acids, which, so it's complete nutrition. It still has the minerals and the vitamins and the nutrients that you need. The only thing you definitely still need to add in is going to be proper hydration, and that does include electrolytes. And I would say the big three are going to be magnesium, potassium, and sodium. Make sure you're getting plenty of those. If you're not, then it wouldn't matter what diet you're on. You got to have those there. But other than that, I mean, it gives you that fuel and nothing else. And I will say this, the strongest medicine on this planet, it's always been this way and it always will be. The strongest medicine on this planet is your own body, your own God-given body. It knows what to do if it's not getting beat up and pounded by toxins on a regular basis. It has to be given the chance. If it's getting beat up and it's getting poisoned every single day, then you're the problem. I mean, what you're putting in your mouth is the problem, which goes back to the initial question. Are we poisoning ourselves? A lot of times we are, and we don't even know it. We don't even know it. So, I mean, and the other thing with carnivores, remember, don't just think of it as a restrictive diet. Think about it as what it is. It's an elimination diet. It's getting rid of all the extra fluff and keeping the good stuff there. If meat was just the answer and it was magical and it could do it all by itself, you could go to McDonald's and buy a quarter pounder with cheese with a large fry and a shake, and the meat on there would be enough. That's not it. It's the elimination of all that other stuff that you're going to get on that burger other than the patty. If all you got was the patties, you'd be doing a lot better. So just keep that in mind. And it's not a fad diet. It's really not. Just remember this. When you stop poisoning yourself, your body finally remembers how to heal because it doesn't have to focus on putting fires out constantly and taking toxins and storing them away and trying to shift around. And it's just constantly under threat and it's battling against these things. When you give it a break, it goes, oh my God, thank you so much. I needed the break. Now I can focus my attention on more healing, more regeneration, more recovery type things. And I promise you, if it's even 1/100th as powerful as it was for me, once you taste that goodness, if you've been inundated with symptoms for years and years like I was, nothing tastes better than that. No food on this planet tastes better than that good health. Okay. Remember this, every bite you take, everything you put in your mouth, whether it be a pill, whether it be a prescription medication or a supplement, whether it be food, every bite, everything you put in your mouth is a vote. Okay. It's a vote, not for today's health, but for your future health down the road. Today's health, as well, but more so, it's that you can actually accumulate good things as well as accumulating toxins. Every purchase that you make, it's a choice. Every symptom you get, hear this one, every symptom you get is feedback. Think of it as with your car. If its check engine light comes on, that's feedback. That's letting you know your car is saying, I have a problem. We need maintenance. Take me in. We need to figure out what the problem is. And if you go in, you're going to expect them to plug it in or whatever, or do a diagnostic something on it, find the problem and fix and get the root cause. You don't want them to replace something that's not the problem. You want them to actually find the real problem and replace that so that you can have your car running again. But what if you went in there and they said, well, it's got this symptom. We're not sure exactly what's causing it, but I'm going to sell you this bottle of additive, and I'm going to need you to add a little bit to your gas tank every time you fill it up. And as long as you do that, check engine light will go off. Okay. It won't stay on. But if you ever stop, it's going to come back on. It's going to come back. Oh, and by the way, when you run out, you're going to have to keep coming back up here and you're going to have to keep buying this from us. That's essentially how modern medicine has landed for a lot of people. They're not getting to the root cause. And if it was your car, you would lose your ever-loving mind if that's the way but when it's your body, for some reason we tolerate it. We put up with it. What I'm telling you is there are doctors out there that will look further. And let me just point you in the right direction if you're looking for one. These are doctors that are trained in integrative or functional medicine. And let me clarify here. Every single one of these doctors, it's not like a different school that they went to. They are still DOs and MDs. They're still pharmacists. They're still dentists. Whatever healthcare professional license that they had to get. They had to get it just like every other one on the planet. This is further education. This is afterwards. They went out and sought even more, and they look at everything. It's more of a holistic approach instead of, oh, you have you have a symptom there. Well, here's a pill for the symptom. Not sure what caused it. They don't do that. They go, okay, I hear your symptom, and I know that sucks. We're going to look at the whole picture and see if maybe the cause is something you don't expect or we don't expect. And if we can find it, we can get rid of it permanently, not put you on a pill that stand for the rest of your life that, by the way, has side effects. You can't fix everything overnight, but you can stop feeding the poison. A lot of times, like I said, it takes not just days, not just months, and sometimes not even just years. Sometimes it's literally a decade plus of continuously poisoning yourself before it manifests in some metabolic disaster, whether that's a compromised gut, whether that's an autoimmune condition of some sort, whether it's some sort of a neurologic condition, whether it's diabetes. We know diabetes. I mean, that one's an easy one. We know that is a metabolic condition. What happens, we've already talked about it. Insulin, it's present, and the body just essentially builds up this resistance to its own hormones that's telling the cells in the body to uptake glucose, to get it out of the blood so that it's not raging high, because once it is raging high, it's very damaging to organs and nerves, and it's associated with so many other comorbidities. It's crazy. And in fact, Alzheimer's, they're calling it type 3 diabetes because it's so closely correlated with insulin resistance. I mean, that speaks for itself. And like I said, you can't fix it overnight. Even if you stop the poison today for a whole year, you're only going to make so much progress, because some of these things is very hard for your body to get rid of. It may be able to get rid of a very small amount every day, and if it took it 10 years to get to this point, it may take quite a while, to get it down. Now, I will say there are certain regimens that more of a functional medicine or an integrative medicine doctor or practitioner could help you with. And because some of these things can be eliminated quicker on certain regimens, such as binders. They can give binders that go in, and what they do is they bind up to some of these toxic things. Your body really can't eliminate it other than the fact that it's bound, and then it just goes in the toilet. Well, that is a good way to eliminate it, but you kind of have to know what is going on. But you can find that out from one of those practitioners. So I would encourage you. You got nothing to lose. And then just ask yourself, what if health isn't complicated? It's just corrupted. Who stands to gain if you stay sick? Ask yourself that question. Who stands to gain? And if they do, maybe get a second opinion. Maybe look a little bit further. Maybe try, even if they tell you there's nothing's going to work, that doesn't mean nothing's going to work. I'm sure that somebody who was told that they weren't going to live from a cancer diagnosis, or was told they'd never walk again, or told whatever. And all of a sudden, boom, not only are they walking, they're running a marathon. And they'll tell you all about it, because they did not listen to that. So I'm just saying, keep looking. Don't let someone just tell you it's over. Now, guys, if you know anybody, again, that this would resonate with, that has anything at all related to the story I just said, or just if it's rooted in inflammation, please share this with them. Especially, they may think that they're doing everything right, like I did. I was the most compliant patient ever. I was doing everything the doctor ordered, and I was only getting sicker. They deserve to know what's really happening. Follow Carnivore X as well. I'm on all the socials. I'm on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and follow along there. If you want to get in contact with me, an easy way is just going to send me an email at Carnivore X. I'm going to spell that CARNIVRX @gmail.com. And you'll just find some pharmacist-led truth, not industry spin. Guys, that wraps up today's episode. I hope somebody found some value. Thank you for listening. And until next time, stay good.